And here we go.
We gotta find a new way to do this like intro, but I can't think of anything. But doesn't it feel cheesy?
Yeah, but like that's the point.
Okay. All right. I'm Kelsey.
And I'm Emily.
And this is a Trial by Podcast.
Hi, everyone. This is JJ, the co-founder of Good Pods. If you haven't heard of it yet, Good Pods is like Goodreads or Instagram, but for podcasts. It's new, it's social, it's different, and it's growing really fast. There are more than 2 million podcasts, and we know that it is impossible to figure out what to listen to. On Good Pods, you follow your friends and podcasters to see what they like. That is the #1 way to discover new shows and episodes. You can find Good Pods on the web or download the app. Happy listening.
Yep. So Molly is here with us again today, but she was just in the pool playing with the other dogs.
She's tuckered out.
Yeah, she looks like she's gonna nap and and be chill. So, but if you just hear like barking, panting, scratching, it is probably either me or Molly.
Definitely Kelsey.
So, today on the docket.
Oh.
Ooh, you like that vocab? On the docket, we have a case that is somewhat local to us here in Cleveland area, which is the murder of Amy Mihaljevic.
Well, technically she disappeared first, so yeah.
Yes, she did. We've just been doing a lot of disappearances lately. It was on my mind. So Amy Mihaljevic was a 10-year-old girl who went missing from Bay Village, which is a suburb of Cleveland and is very close to where Emily and I grew up. So we go to Bay Village every so often. And so it's a really interesting story. And I'm sure everyone who's listening to the podcast at this point is probably from Ohio and, knows us. So you all know where Bay Village is. But just for all of our millions of future listeners who don't, yeah, that's where it is. And we're probably going to accidentally call it Bay. That's like what people call it who live here. So if you Bay Village, same place. So Amy Mihaljevic was born on December 11th, 1987 in Little Rock, Arkansas to parents Mark Mihaljevic and Margaret McNulty Mihaljevic. She also had a brother named Jason, who was 3 years old when Amy was born.
I didn't know she was from Arkansas. I forgot about that.
Yeah, she moved here when she was 3. So when she was 3, the family moved to Bay. So, she probably didn't ever remember living in Arkansas or anything. But this is like one of the biggest stories on the west side of Cleveland, like to ever happen, I guess, probably in the last
and
century.
Also in like a very small town. Like Bay is like a nice suburb, very nice. Like,
and
I would say it's like nicer than the town that we grew up in. Like,
yeah, it's very small town.
Like right
vibes,
on the lake.
Right on the lake, very nice. Beaches, parks.
Yeah,
it's definitely a wealthier
very
community.
Quiet.
And that's actually one of the reasons that like the family chose to move there. So Amy's father, Mark, had received a job offer from GM to work as like a service representative. So when they were moving to Ohio, they chose Bay just because it had a great school system and it's just known for being a safe area in general. And it was actually voted one of the safest towns in America in the 80s. And according to Cleveland Magazine, from the beginning of 1989 to October of that year when Amy was abducted, there were no murders, rapes, kidnappings, or abductions in Bay. And in that same time frame, the most action the city really saw was 3 robberies, 2 assaults, and 12 car thefts. So,
Damn.
Yes, wealthy area, safe area, small town, kind of is like everybody knows everybody, I think, especially in the 80s. Mm-hmm. So Now, at the time of her disappearance, Amy and her brother Jason both attended Bay Middle School, and she was 10 years old in the 5th grade, while her brother Jason was 13 in the 7th grade. So it's said by many people that knew Amy that she was known for being like a bright and outgoing student who really enjoyed school. So that Friday, October 27th, started off as a normal day in Bay. The Mihaljevics headed to school, where Amy actually attended a talk that was given by Officer Mark Spetzel on stranger danger. And Mark Spetzel ends up being like a very big part of this investigation. And at the time, he was just an officer, but he's actually now the chief of police in Bay.
Oh, shit.
So
I didn't know that.
That same day, Amy's brother Jason planned on going to the local Baskin Robbins after school because he had a coupon for some ice cream. But he
That's such a tell of the time. I feel like nobody's like, let's go to Baskin Robbins. Like, I know they're still around, but like now I feel like it's like, I don't know, Dairy Queen or like something else.
Yeah,
like,
more
Baskin
like
Robbins.
fast foody. Yeah, not just ice cream.
Yeah.
It sounds nice, though. Just stop at Baskin Robbins
Right?
after
Like,
school.
Let's go get some ice cream.
Now, unfortunately for Jason, though, he did not go because he heard that some boys from school who bullied him were going to be there, so he didn't want to go. So he decided to
guy.
go straight home instead. This is when the afternoon becomes unusual because when Jason gets home from school, Amy wasn't there yet. Now, this was odd because at the time, the 5th graders were let out of school an hour before the 7th graders were. So Amy was usually home for a while before Jason got home. So he thinks this is weird. And about 15 minutes after he got there and, she still didn't show up, he decides to call his mother, Margaret, to let her know. So Margaret was at work at Trading Times magazine. So he called her office phone. And she was actually waiting for the call as Jason and Amy called her every day after school to let her know that they had made it home safely. But usually it was after Jason arrived. So it was one phone call for both of them after Jason got home.
So
again.
she wasn't like expecting them to call earlier.
Right. There was nothing at this point to like tip her off to anything weird going on until Jason calls her and says, "Hey, Amy's not home yet. Like, do you know where she is?" And Margaret at this point wasn't too worried because Amy did mention that she was going to audition for choir after school that day. So she just told Jason to wait for a little bit and just call her back once Amy got home. Mm-hmm. So again, this is still over an hour after Amy got out of school. So she's kind of thinking choir audition.
A long choir audition.
Yeah, she's kind of thinking it shouldn't have taken that long, but I don't know, maybe she's chatting with friends or something after.
Yeah.
So at around 3:30, when Amy still hadn't arrived, Jason called his mom back to let her know because he's been home for about a half hour at this point. And she's starting to think it's weird. Like, okay, she got out of school around 2 o'clock. It's 3:30. Something's going on. So she started to finish up for the day and kind of just close everything she was working on so she could head home early just to figure out where Amy was and what was going on. But right before heading out, so this was around like 3:40 p.m., her phone rang again. This time she picked up and it was Amy. So relief kind of washed over her. She's probably thinking to herself like she was overreacting. So she kind of sits back down, settles in, and chats with Amy. Now, she was assuming it was the audition that kept Amy behind at school, so she asked her how it went, to which Amy responded just, "Fine." Then Margaret asked her if she was home, and Amy goes, "Yes." This was weird. Like, for Amy, Margaret said that Amy was normally like a very talkative little girl, which I get that. I get
Can
that.
relate.
If I ever just said, if my mom asked me
I
how
never
was
shut
your
the
day,
fuck up.
yes,
Literally,
we're
my
good at
dad
pod.
just said, I remember this because it was kind of traumatizing. My dad was like, "Don't you ever stop talking." And at the time, it hurt really.
Dale.
Yeah, I know. It was kind of
Dale,
mean.
what are you
but
doing?
But now I'm like, I was probably being annoying as fuck. and I
Yeah,
was
probably.
not
Just
shut
kidding.
the
We
fuck
love you,
up.
Dale. We love you, Dale. Don't worry. She's worked through it with her therapist. She's fine.
Oh yeah, touch that.
No, but save that's why we're good at podcasting is because we don't shut the fuck up. But anyway, so Margaret's like, this is weird. She's acting strange. And like, she kind of just assumes though that the audition didn't go well. She's kind of thinking she's upset. Like Amy sounds upset. She's not speaking because she's
being short with her. Yeah.
She's being short. So instead of pressing her over the phone about it, she just decided that, look, I'll talk to her in person when I get home. She could tell, it seemed like something was wrong. So she just ends the call with her. But after she gets off the phone, Margaret starts to worry again because she's kind of like ruminating on it. And she's like, it's just weird. She's like, this is kind of odd. And it just wasn't sitting right with her. So she wasn't like super worried something was going on. She just was worried something was wrong with her daughter. Her daughter was upset. So she decides she is going to leave work early. So she does. And she arrives home around 4:30 p.m. But when she gets there, she asks Jason where Amy is. And he tells her that she still hadn't come home. Even though when she was on the phone with Amy, she said, "Are you at home?" And Amy said yes.
Yes.
So she, like, at this point is like, what the fuck is going on? Like, this is when she starts to get a little bit nervous that maybe something.
Yeah, like what? She was just home. I just talked to her. Did she leave? Like, what's going on?
Right. So her first instinct was to go to Amy's school to see if she was still there. She thought that maybe Amy had called her from the school, and in her head, she's like, that makes sense. Maybe she was just being short because she was upset, and she didn't want like her friends or like other kids to overhear her saying her audition didn't go well or something like that. So she's kind of like calming herself down with this thought. But when she arrives at the school, everyone was already gone for the day. There were no teachers, there were no students, no one in sight. What was in sight was a lone teal bicycle with a white wicker basket, Amy's bicycle. Margaret later told Cleveland Magazine, quote, "I knew right then that it was something terrible. That bike, I was sick, I was shaking. I knew right then something terrible happened to Amy," end quote. According to her family, Amy loved that bike. She rode it everywhere. She would never leave it at the school, on its own. And apparently, like, I guess some of the other kids would like tease her about this bike, which I don't know what's funny.
Kids are fucking mean. I hate little kids can be fucking mean.
I like because
for no goddamn reason.
In the magazine, they're talking about, she loved this bike and would ride it everywhere, even though other kids teased her for it. And I'm like, don't all kids ride bikes? What are they teasing her about?
Yeah,
I don't
that's
know.
what I'm saying.
But
just anything.
The point is, like, this set Margaret off. She knew, she's like, this is not good. Something is wrong.
Like, that was her best friend.
At this point, she heads directly to the police department, which is inside the City Hall building at the corner of Wolf Road and Dover Center Road. By the time she got there, it had been less than an hour since she spoke with Amy on the phone. So a lot of the times we hear, in missing persons cases, you hear like officers telling the families, oh, we need to wait and see if the person turns up, or they're probably out playing with friends, or they ran away, or whatever. But in this case, the officer on duty, which was Officer Barbara Slepecki, I knew I was going to trip on that name, Barbara Slepecki, she immediately classified the case as a child abduction. Because she was like, that's weird. Why would she say she was at home? And she was being off on the phone. That's weird. Yeah. Immediately, so less than an hour after this phone call. So good for her. So after this, the hunt for Amy began. At 5:14 p.m., the police sent out a bulletin to Bay Village, Westlake, Rocky River, Fairview Park, and Avon Lake, which are all neighboring cities, and basically put out a bolo with Amy's description. Now, it wasn't until about 6 p.m. that evening that Amy's father, Mark, arrived home from work and was notified that she was missing by a house full of people and a panicked Margaret. As a customer service rep, Mark had spent most of the day on the road, making him unreachable due to the lack of cell phones in the 80s. For all the youngins listening, they didn't have cell phones in the 80s. So Mark was obviously completely shocked by the news that his daughter had been missing for hours. So he basically just rolled up his sleeve and like, what do I need to do to help find her? So he started by searching the house with the police from top to bottom. When he came up empty-handed, he and family friends moved the search outside. He later told Cleveland Magazine, quote, "We just wanted to do something. We searched the ravine, the one that runs to the lake. We walked the whole thing, every inch, calling her name, Amy, Amy," end quote. I hate that.
Yeah.
Now, by 7 p.m., countless volunteers from the community were scouring Bay, hoping to find Amy before the sun went down completely. By 9 p.m., the police station had turned into a command post. Supplies from the community flooded in, as did the calls from local residents offering to help search with their own vehicles, boats, and dogs. At this time, Margaret was at the house calling everyone she could think of just to see if anyone had seen Amy after school, but they hadn't. Eventually, the night passed, and the odds of finding Amy alive dropped significantly. By 7:10 a.m. the next morning, the Bay Village Police Department called the FBI for help. So child abduction is considered a federal crime. I think we talked about this in another episode because they often take kids over state lines. So this allowed the FBI to take over the case. They joined not only the Bay Police, but the police of neighboring cities, the Highway Patrol, Metro Park Rangers, and local civilians in the search. In charge of the FBI investigation was Special Agent Dick Wren, who actually lived in Bay Village at the time and had a daughter Amy's same age.
That's gotta suck for him, dude.
Could you?
That's gotta suck.
But if I were the parents, that would make me feel better because I'm like, this guy
yeah,
gets
but
it.
for him, that's gotta suck.
Yeah.
That could have been my kid.
Yeah. Now, so Special Agent Wren and Detective Jim Tompkins, who was the local lead detective on the case, started canvassing the neighborhood. Pretty early on, a neighbor of the Mihaljevics passed along some troubling information that he had received from his stepdaughter, who was a close friend of Amy's. According to the girl, Amy had received phone calls from an unidentified man in the days leading up to her disappearance. Not only did he know her phone number, but based on what Amy told this friend and her brother about the calls, he also knew where she lived, where Margaret worked, what time Margaret came home, and seemed to be familiar with the neighborhood and the local strip mall called Bay Square. You know where Bay Square is, right?
Yeah, I think so. It has is there a Mark's? No.
I think it used to be a Mark's.
There's
there's something back there. I think it used to be Mark's. But
yeah,
it's
there's
not anymore.
there's a little breakfast place I used to go there.
Yeah, and then there's the Heinens behind it, but it's kind of the main. Bay doesn't have a ton of shopping or anything. It's just a tiny little square with just a couple small mom and pop shops, and then there used to be a grocery store. I don't know what is there now, but so anyway, the mystery caller apparently gained Amy's trust by claiming that he was friends with her mother and wanted to get her a gift to celebrate her new promotion at work. The only thing was, he needed Amy to meet him at Bay Square so he could take her shopping so she could help him pick out the gift for her mom. And he also told her that there would be an extra gift in it for her as a thank you for helping him. So investigators later discovered that Margaret hadn't really gotten a promotion at work, but she had recently switched from part-time to full-time. So it was enough to make them think that the man may have known or interacted with Margaret to some extent. So, of course, they look at Margaret's coworkers, but they also were looking elsewhere, who, besides just close friends, who knows her even
personally.
Yeah, an
how would anybody
acquaintance.
know that?
So I guess Margaret was known for frequenting a Bay restaurant for lunch, and they didn't say I can't find what restaurant. I don't know if it exists anymore, but she was known for going to this restaurant for lunch during the workday and having what some people would say a few too many glasses of wine. Mm-hmm. And so they thought it was possible that maybe it was someone who worked at the restaurant or went there often that could have overheard Margaret's conversations about work, about her kids, or whatever. But really, they kind of look into this and not a ton comes out of it. Anyway, wanting to surprise her mom, helps to surprise her mom with this gift, she agrees to meet the man. The man told her that he would pick her up at Bay Square and then they would drive to the mall together to shop. He reminded her not to spill the secret as it would ruin the surprise for her mom. So on the afternoon of October 27th, Amy, she had told her mom she was going to audition for choir. But of course, she went to meet the man as planned at Bay Square, which sat directly across the street from the police station in City Hall, and was also, as the police later learned, the last place that Amy was ever seen alive.
Oh, so they didn't go to Baskin-Robbins?
Well, it's right outside of that Baskin-Robbins that her brother had planned to visit that day, but decided not to because of the bullies.
Oh.
Isn't that fucked?
Yeah. That's wild, dude.
Isn't that fucked?
Fucking bullies. They ruin everything.
Don't bully people or a little girl might get murdered because of you. That just makes you think because we're going to go on to later see, I'm going to talk about it in a moment. There are witnesses that saw Amy with this man.
Yeah.
But she didn't look panicked or anything, so they didn't
were like,
really
oh,
care.
Okay.
But if that was her brother,
then
I'm
she
sure
would be
she
like, who the fuck is that?
Yeah, who's this guy? You can't go with him because he's 13. He probably knows a little bit better. Yeah. Isn't that fucked?
That's sad.
Hey, if you are one of the bullies who used to bully Jason Mihaljevic, fuck you.
Yeah.
Fuck you. I know you were just a kid, but also fuck you as a kid.
Also fuck your parents.
I'm sure you
fuck
really
your parents because it all starts at home.
Yeah. I'm sure you really learned your lesson and you know, in the hardest way humanly possible, and you're probably a good person now. But if you aren't and you didn't learn your lesson, fuck you.
Solid fuck you.
A big ass fuck you. Anyway. So this abductor, obviously, because he took her from across the street from the police station. So he's not only
balls on this guy.
The balls.
The balls this guy has.
Hades, let me tell you. The balls on this guy.
Hades,
you're never going to
honey.
believe this. Is that from something? Or
No.
that was just off the dome last week?
I think I just fucking making it up.
I think
I was channeling my inner fucking...
Hades, honey, you're never going to believe this.
The little, like, what's the... like, the sidekick in Hercules? That's like... I don't know where... I think I just made that up.
I don't know, but we have to watch... We have to watch it now.
Hades, honey.
You're so good at it. Okay, it's about to get really sad, so we can't. I won't make any more Hades, honey. So he's not only bold, but he's also calculated. He was smart enough to have Amy call her mom after school, which bought him an extra hour of time to like get her out of there before she was like really alarmed, because she ended up staying at work longer because Amy called her and said, oh, yeah, I'm home, whatever.
Yeah, she's like, don't worry about me. I came home. I'm fine.
So that makes me think he must know that she calls her mom every day after school, which Amy probably told him. That's where my mind went. But freaky. So the police say that they have no doubt that why can't I talk today? The police say that they have no doubt that Amy was standing right next to the man as she was on the phone with her mom. They think the guy was right there, and that's why she was being short.
Yeah.
So by the time the sun was setting on Saturday, October 10th, thousands of flyers with Amy's picture had been spread across 3 states, and the number of Bay residents actively searching for Amy had only grown. More than 60 FBI agents were on the case at this point, led by Wren and his partner, Special Agent Gary Belluamini. Despite the massive manpower, Wren did not have high hopes at this point. He told Cleveland Magazine that, quote, with Amy gone 24 hours and the setup story with the stranger, we knew if we didn't find her quick, and he kind of like trails off as he's talking to them, it was clear that we were dealing with a crisis situation, end quote. So I think what he's saying there is they knew that this wasn't just like a family friend took her, or it was like this person's taking her to hurt her.
Yeah.
Now, despite the grim outlook, no one gave up, and the search for Amy became the most intense search for a missing person in local history. To this day, law enforcement from the local to the federal level has spent more than 60,000 official documented hours on the case. 14,000 people have been interviewed, 8,000 leads pursued, and 120 potential suspects questioned, which is crazy. I'm like, they don't even have 14,000 people in Bay, do they? Like, how many? What? Look that up.
I don't know. Hold on.
Bay. Okay,
well,
so
in the 90s, it was 17,000, so that sounds right.
Okay, so they talked to everyone that lived in... Just kidding. I'm sure some of them were outside of Bay Village, but it's just crazy.
Yeah, that's a lot of people.
So through interviews investigators held at the school, they learned that Amy and 2 of her friends left school around 2:04 p.m. that day and walked to the Bay Plaza. Once they got there, Amy went and like stood by herself, and it just seemed like she was waiting for someone, is how her friends described it, and she was. Mm-hmm. So one of her friends, as well as a second male witness, who I believe is also a child too. This isn't like an adult, but they didn't clarify his age. But to me, it sounded like he was a child. So
I think I remember in the documentary it being like a teenager.
Okay, yeah. So one of her friends and this second male witness saw a man walk up to Amy and put his hand like on the middle of her back, kind of just gently directing her to walk in a specific direction. They said there was no struggle and Amy didn't seem alarmed. So neither witness thought anything of it and just kind of just focused back in on their own conversations with their friends. But the next time they kind of looked over to that area, Amy was just gone. So they didn't see her like get into her car or anything, but they saw her with this man.
Yeah.
Who, like, obviously they didn't recognize. The male witness said the man looked like he was 35 to 40 years old, wearing round glasses. He said he was about 5'7 to 5'11 with dark brown wavy hair that was starting to gray and bald just a little bit. The other witness, Amy's friend, described a very similar man, but she didn't remember him wearing glasses. So the investigators had 2 different composites drawn and spread all over. So like one composite from each witness. But if you look at the composites next to each other, it looks like the exact same guy. One is with glasses and one is without, pretty much. Like the lips are a little bit different, but it looks like the same guy.
Yeah.
Now, after this, their focus then shifted to the calls. So since the man had told Amy on the phone that her mother had gotten a promotion, they start to look closely into anyone who would have known about Margaret going full time. So this, like I said earlier, started with her coworkers, but didn't really bring any significant leads. Same thing with that restaurant that she would go to all the time. Which, by the way, I don't think I mentioned this. The reason that they were so interested in that restaurant is because she would go there with her coworkers. Mm-hmm. So she's had a couple too many. And if she's anything like me, she probably talks loud as fuck after a couple drinks. And she's
how the hell are ya?
They were thinking this restaurant's interesting because she's with her coworkers. So they're probably talking about work. So someone could have overheard it. But again, didn't really lead to anything. They also wanted to know if anyone else in the town had gotten similar strange phone calls, so they mailed out letters to residents asking for any information and quickly found out that a girl from another town had received a similar call just the month before.
Oh, shit.
According to the girl, she was at home alone with her little brother when the phone rang. Her brother answered it and was talking for a while on the phone. So she was like, basically like, who is this? Give me the phone. It was a man on the other line, and he told her that he was an old friend of their mom's, and he wanted the girl to come shopping with him to help him pick out a gift for her mother. She quickly got off the phone and called her mom to ask, like, who is this guy? Do you know this guy?
This guy getting a gift? Why are we getting a gift for you for your birthday? Like,
right.
Why is he asking about getting... Yeah.
So the mom is immediately alarmed and she just leaves work to come straight home and then calls the police to report the call because she's like, what the fuck is going on? A detective did come to the house and interview the girl, but nothing really came of it at the time. So investigators on Amy's case later learned that 2 years prior to receiving these calls, that same girl had actually been sexually assaulted. We don't really know much about the attack except that she was 14 at the time, and the attacker had stolen her earrings, which were shaped like horse heads.
You said that she was assaulted before the
yeah.
phone call?
So basically, she was sexually assaulted. 2 years later, she gets this phone call and whatever, and she thinks it's the guy who sexually assaulted her.
Yeah.
And then a month after she gets the phone calls when Amy gets the phone calls and goes missing.
Okay.
So she was like terrified by these calls, assuming that it was the same man who assaulted her. And like I said, when she was assaulted, her earrings were taken and they were shaped like horse heads. Mm-hmm. Remember that. After this connection was made, investigators from Amy's case went to interview the girl. While at the home, they noticed horseback riding ribbons all over the place. And so just like making conversation, probably trying to make this girl comfortable talking about something kind of difficult to talk about. They asked the girl, like, oh, where'd you get all these ribbons or whatever? And she told them that she rode horses at Holly Hill Farms, which was the same place that Amy Mihaljevic rode horses.
Oh, shit.
And where could someone find both the phone numbers and addresses of both girls? In the records at Holly Hill Farms. So police immediately searched the farm using manpower, canines, helicopters, and even divers, but they found nothing. After conducting interviews with the farm staff and families who rode horses there, Special Agent Wren turned his attention to a man named H.B. Bound, who was the owner's son. He lived in a small apartment above a garage on the property and was described by many of the kids who rode there as, at the very least, an odd guy, if not just outright creepy. Bound was a veteran of the Vietnam War and was diagnosed paranoid schizophrenic after returning home. Despite this diagnosis, he had a collection of guns and other weapons in his room.
Oh,
Gotta love that.
that sounds legal.
Shannon Conway, who also took lessons at the farm, said, quote, "All of us girls thought he was really creepy. He would wander around the barn sometimes. Every girl at the barn assumed HB did it," end quote. Amy's friend, who would also ride there with her name was Jennifer Kozak. She told investigators that Bound tended to pay special attention to Amy. Wren questioned Bound about his whereabouts on the day of the abduction, but Bound had no verifiable alibi. In fact, Bound's brother, Greg, told investigators that Bound didn't return home until late that night. Bound was brought in on multiple occasions to take lie detector tests, but he was never held by police. And less than a week after Amy's abduction, he checked himself into the psychiatric unit at a veterans hospital in Brecksville, where police were not allowed to speak with him.
Interesting. Funny how that happened that way.
It's around this time, on a secondary search of the farm's property, searchers find a pair of green sweatpants near the farm, which match the description of what Amy was wearing the day she disappeared. So they sent these to an FBI lab for testing to confirm whether or not they were Amy's. While waiting for the results of these tests, investigators received a call notifying them that a girl from the city of North Olmsted, which is about 15 minutes from Bay Village, this girl had also received phone calls from an unidentified male who told her that he worked with her mom and wanted to buy her a present. God. So this is the third one that they're hearing about.
This what do you call it? A serial abductor?
Yeah. Well, I mean, yeah, he probably is. I have a feeling he did other stuff, but
if it's the same guy that raped the one, sexually assaulted the other girl and took her earrings,
yeah
he's definitely a serial abductor
or serial rapist
or serial killer.
Yep. Yeah. So the girl told her sister. So basically, the girl gets this call and she's talking to the guy, whatever. She gets off the phone and she tells her sister about it. And I believe the sister was older than her because the sister's like, basically like, fuck? Oh, hell no.
Yeah.
The sister is like, oh, hell no.
That's not cool.
So the sister like tells the parents. Now, the girls also say that the man must have known exactly when to call, because not only did he call only when they were home alone, because the girl had talked to him multiple times on the phone.
Oh.
Then she's telling the sister, and the sister's like, oh, hell no. And then he calls
who the
again.
Fuck is this guy?
And basically they realize, you know, because now both sisters learn like, oh, hell no, this is not right.
Yeah.
And they realize that he's only calling them when they're home alone.
Ooh,
and on top of that, they also began to notice that there was always a car outside when he called. Which I was like, they don't have cell phones, but I think they had car phones. But
dude, what a time. Car phones.
This is the thing, is like, I couldn't find any description of what this car looks like. So I have a feeling they just didn't know. Because I'm like, they didn't even specify that it was always the same car. That's what I want to know. Like, because I could see like girls just being like, well, maybe it's a different car every time because he's a criminal and whatever. Which, you know, as adults, you probably think, well, it's probably just different people. But whatever. Hello to all of our jury members listening to the pod. This is Kelsey here with a brief interruption. Now, if you are enjoying today's episode, I want you to keep in mind that we are a fully independent podcast, meaning that all of the research, the writing, the editing, the promotion on social media and marketing, all of these things are done by Emily and myself. So we hope that if you guys are really enjoying the podcast, you'll take a little bit of action to help support us. So there's a couple ways you can do this. The most important thing that you can do for us is to make sure that wherever you are listening to this podcast, make sure you are following us / subscribe to us, whatever they call it. Make sure you are following us. Another way that you can help support us is to rate and review the podcast. So on Spotify, you can give us a 5-star rating. You can't write a review, but you can write a review on Apple Podcasts. So that is super helpful, just so everyone else knows that you're enjoying it. Now, the third thing that is super, super helpful, tell your friends about us. tell your friends and family, anyone that you know who likes true crime. Either just tell them verbally about us, send them your favorite episode, whatever it may be. Just help us get the word out. That's one of the easiest things that you can do without putting a ton of work into it. So we appreciate you guys listening. Thank you for being here. We really do love doing this, and we appreciate all of your support. So let's get back to the story. So in the HBO documentary series called Lake Erie Murders, they do 2 or 3 episodes on this case.
Yeah.
And there are a lot of these like quotes and interviews that I'm talking about come straight from that documentary. So the girls are in this documentary, and they say that like in their minds, they had no doubt that he was outside in that car watching them when they took the calls.
I mean, that's where my mind would go. Like, how would he know that they're always alone, you know, like every time he called? That's so creepy.
And that makes sense with Amy because like he knew that she called her mom after school. He knew what time she got out of school and whatever. And it's like, yeah, it's creepy. So as word spread around town that other children had also gotten these calls, fear amongst the residents began to grow. This fear, along with the updated composite sketches released by police, kept the tips coming in. Now, one of these tips came from the mother of Christy Sabo, who was Amy's best friend. She said that she recognized the sketch, and it was a handyman who had worked on her church right after Amy's disappearance. And basically, like, she talks about he had just kind of like volunteered to like do this stuff for the church and like started kind of being a part of the church community, but he was new to it. He had never done it before. And the reason that like this kind of tips her off is, well, first of all, he looks like the sketch, but the profile that they also described like in the news, they told people to look out for certain things. And one of these things was a sudden interest in religion. So she's like, we got 2 for 2 here.
Yeah.
You got to look into this guy. Now, when Christy's mother reported this to the police, she was told that others had also called in tips about the same man, who was Kurt Van Guten. Interestingly, one of these calls even came from Van Guten's ex-girlfriend.
Oh, God.
And that, to me, is compelling. Because I have a lot of, like, I've dated some shitty people, but not a single one would I be like, even if I saw a sketch that looked like them.
That reminds me of like Ted Bundy when she finally calls and was like, I think you're talking about my boyfriend. Like,
yeah. I was just going to say, like, even if the sketch looked like them, I would never think any of them would like have something to do with it. But I guess you should call anyway.
But if you did, that's when I would be like, oh, well, she knows him better than anybody, so she's calling. And,
that's what I'm saying. Like, I bet there are some like crazy motherfuckers out there that,
100%.
like, they would call in their ex-girlfriend or ex-boyfriend for something horrible just to like get back at them. But I'm like, I don't think that's the case here. I don't think
fucked up,
dude. I know someone who would do that.
Yeah.
So shortly before Amy went missing, Van Guten had painted the Mihaljevic's neighbor's house. So it is possible that he had like met or interacted with Amy at some point. His parents also lived across the street from where Amy was taken. However, he did have an alibi for the time of the abduction. He and a childhood friend had attended the Bay Fairview football game that evening, and the friend confirmed that they had also been together the entire afternoon. So I just want to say, I don't think, based on what I've read, I don't think this guy had anything to do with it. But also, I'm like, the Bay Fairview, like, what time were football games in the 80s? Because now, like, a Friday night football game at a school.
Like 8 o'clock, aren't they?
Yeah, it's like 7 or 8 o'clock. So I'm like, I guess they're saying, like, oh, he couldn't have, like, taken her far away and, like, murdered her. But I'm like, he could have taken her somewhere. Like, he kidnapped her at, like, 3:30. Like, she called her mom at 3:40 p.m.
The football game?
Yeah, and then, you know, so he had an alibi. But,
yeah, that's true.
Besides this, though, there's, like, nothing to connect this guy. So, like, I'm not saying it was this guy, but I'm just, like, they give this as the reasoning. They don't think it – I'm like, that's not enough for me.
Yeah.
It's not enough for me.
Yeah, they still don't know who did it, though.
Right. But we're going to get into some of the other suspects.
Oh, I have a theory on who I think.
Yeah. I think we probably have the same one because we've both seen the HBO documentary series, like just so everyone knows.
Everyone should go watch that also. It's really good.
It's so good. It's so good. And we're also going to get into my boy, James Renner, who is like a local reporter who dived deep into this case. And he's featured in the HBO documentary, but he also wrote a book on the case. Mm-hmm. And so I listened to the audiobook because I don't want to read. And just kidding. I make myself sound like an idiot.
Read for me.
No, I listened to the audiobook because it was free and I didn't want to pay for the book, to be honest with you. But
valid reason.
Yeah, he's really great. I don't know where I was going with that, but you'll hear me talk about him.
It's a good book.
Anyway, I really don't, I'm not saying I think this guy did it. I'm just saying that's not enough for me. Anyway, while investigators worked tirelessly following leads, the community rallied to support them. They even created the Amy Center, where they would convene and collect food and supplies for the investigators and volunteers. People would donate supplies and paper and even volunteer their time to mail out like missing persons flyers. One of these volunteers was a man named Billy, who was 35 at the time. I'm choosing not to use Billy's last name because I think this case ruined his life and his legacy, and I'm convinced that I really don't think he had anything to do with it. I don't know that for sure, but I don't think so. So we're just going to call him Billy. So he had met Margaret while working at a booth at the West Side Market. And
love the West Side Market. I was just there last weekend.
Yeah,
Can't say enough good things about it.
Tell our millions and millions of worldwide listeners what the West Side Market is.
Oh, it's like a giant farmer's market, but it's in like this super, super old building. 10 minutes outside of Cleveland? It's in Ohio City.
Yeah.
But it's all local grown. Like everyone has their own little vendors. Oh
yeah, my God, and there's like fruits and veggies and stuff, but there's also like fresh pasta.
Yeah,
and
fresh
like
pasta,
there's like butcher stands.
Yeah, they have Steve's Gyros are the best gyros
Shout
I
out
will
Steve's
ever
Gyros.
have in my entire life.
I've never had it. We should go.
Oh, dude, we have to. It's so good. Yeah, everyone has to have Steve's Gyros if they live in Cleveland.
All right, we got to check it out.
But it's really good. Highly recommend West Side Market.
So anyway, while he was working a booth at the West Side Market, he met Margaret one day. And this was before Amy disappeared. And he must have known her by name because when Amy went missing, like he immediately was like, "Oh, I should help like this poor woman." Like
like we talk all the time. Yeah,
at the market. Like so, he donated reams of paper and volunteered his time at the Amy Center. He even sent 2 decorative pins to Margaret with a letter explaining that one was for her and the other was for Amy when she returned. Now, it turns out that these items, like the pins and the paper that he donated, they were all stolen from the store that he worked at the time. Oof. But still, investigators found his generosity, if you want to call it that, and his interest in the case suspicious. So he was questioned by investigators on multiple occasions about his, possible involvement in the crime. But Billy always vehemently denied having anything to do with Amy's disappearance.
I feel like in the documentary too, they make him like look like more of a suspect than he is. Like I remember watching the documentary and be like, holy shit, that's so weird. That why would he like be so invested in this case?
Yeah.
I don't think he had anything to do with it, but they do like press him pretty hard in the documentary, I feel like.
Yeah, it is like I get it there because I think that was one of the things they said in the profile is like someone who's like super following the news and whatever. Mm-hmm. And I think they should have looked into him. But again, it's just one of those things where like that's not enough to be convincing to me.
Yeah.
And then like it's one of those things where he's since passed away, which I'm going to talk about right now. But they really like lay into this guy as like maybe he murdered and maybe he did. Let's look into it. But sometimes like they talk about it as if he is the killer and whatever. And it's like, maybe don't just shit on this guy's memory.
Yeah, exactly.
Maybe just like fart around it a little bit because it's a little stinky the way he was like so curious about this. I get it.
Yeah.
He should be looked into, but let's not just completely shit on his entire like life and reputation.
Yeah.
Anyway. About 5 weeks after Amy's disappearance, a young girl had called into the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children's hotline and simply said, quote, "My name is Amy Mihaljevic and I'm in Farmington, Maine," and then hung up. Now, when the recording was played for Amy's parents, they believed it was her voice, but still it was sent to the FBI's audio specialists along with a recording of Amy's voice from a home video to, be determined by audio specialists. You get it. Now, devastatingly, the FBI's analysis of the audio concluded definitively that the caller was not Amy. Now, this caller was eventually tracked down, but apparently she was like severely mentally ill, so there were no charges ever brought against her.
Yeah.
Which is sad, but
yeah,
it's sad for the family too. So soon after this ray of hope that was quickly crushed, the Mihaljevics received more bad news. The testing on the sweatpants found near Holly Hill Farms determined that they were not Amy's. Now, I couldn't find anywhere like what tests they did on them to say that they weren't hers. Mm-hmm. But because you would think if they weren't her size, they were too big or something, you don't even need to do tests. But I'm like, They didn't have DNA in the 80s, so what were they testing?
They could test, they had
maybe
hair.
Blood type?
I thought they could test hair follicles then.
Maybe it was hair.
I think it was hair.
Yeah, but
they tested something.
They don't think it was hers. Now, all Margaret and Mark could do to help was just try and keep Amy's name in the news. So they consistently did interviews and TV appearances, even appearing on the news on December 11th, which was Amy's 11th birthday. For the segment, Margaret allowed broadcasters into their home while they threw a small party for her daughter. For her birthday, Margaret wrote Amy the following letter that she read on the news.
Oh, this was so sad. I remember.
Yeah. Quote, "My dearest Amy, since you aren't here at the moment and we don't know the address, we decided that the only way we could get birthday wishes to you was this way. We know from birthdays past that you would choose spaghetti for your meal and angel food cake with confetti frosting." Oh, that kills me.
I know.
So, sorry. So, in your honor, that's what we'll be having. Don't worry, we'll save some for you too. One thing we won't tell you is what your present is. You'll have to come home to find out what that is. In our hearts, we know that instead of a box to unwrap, you only want one thing for your birthday, to come home. We're here waiting for you, sweetie. Until then, our gift to you is lots and lots of love and prayers for your well-being. We miss you so much. Love, Mom, Dad, and Jason.
Me chills.
I'm like, I feel like I chuckled a little, but it's like a so I don't cry thing because I'm an easy crier. So sorry if you heard me like chuckle. I'm not laughing. I'm trying not to cry. Okay. Mark Mihaljevic later told reporter James Renner, my boy, that this day on Amy's 11th birthday was the day that he lost hope that Amy would ever be found alive. So less than 2 months later, on February 8th, 1990, a woman named Janet Siebold set out for her usual early morning run. Janet lived in Ruggles Township, which is a super rural area in Ashland County, about 50 miles from Cleveland. I'm so proud of myself for saying rural on the first try. I have to say
Why do they make it so fucking hard to say? Like, that's such a weird word.
Yeah, and
rural.
I have to say it again, so like just internally cheer for me if I do it again.
Keep the first time in your head.
So she tended to run the same route often. So this route took her through some like barren cornfields and up an access road that led to a sugar mill. It was across from the access road that she noticed what she thought was a pile of clothing on the ground. Looking a little closer, she noticed the hair and realized that it wasn't a pile of clothing. It was the body of a young girl in a green outfit.
Could you imagine just going on a run and finding a fucking body?
No.
Of a little girl?
No, of a 10-year-old girl.
That gives me chills.
Which, and we'll get into it in a second, was extremely decomposed. I cannot imagine. And she talks, we're going to get to it, but she talks about how this affected her.
Oh, I can only imagine.
after seeing this, she's terrified to go any closer. So she basically just runs to the closest house she can find and banged on the door, like screaming for help. And she's just like, I think I saw a dead body, like call the police, like did not know what to do. Mm-hmm. So Janet later told James Renner while he was like interviewing people for his book on the case that she thinks about Amy and what she saw that day every single day of her life. And she said that she's battled very deep depression ever since.
Oh, that's sad.
Which it's like, I mean, you can't unsee something like that. Yeah. It's horrible. Now, Amy's body was face down about 12 feet away from the road. She was dressed in the outfit that she was wearing the day she was abducted, but the police say it appeared she had been undressed and redressed, and her shoes were missing. Also missing were her turquoise earrings, which were in the shape of horse heads. And if you remember, the girl who also got a phone call a month before Amy, who was, assaulted 2 years before that, like whoever assaulted her stole her earrings during the assault, and they were shaped like horse heads too. Which to me is like, it'd be one thing if it's hard because it's like maybe just stealing the earrings is his thing, but it's like, does it have something to do with them being shaped like horse heads?
Yeah,
because that makes me think it's the
guy from the horse farm. Yeah.
But it's also like it could just be an earring thing, but it's like that's
very specific.
Yeah. So
and the fact that they were both they both took lessons at the same horse farm. That's what's crazy.
Yeah, it's freaky. It's freaky for sure. Now, just a quick warning, this is going to get a little bit graphic for a second, but I wanted to mention it because it just kind of tells you a little bit more about what happened, and I think kind of makes you realize the horror about what happened. But if you don't want to hear this, skip 30 seconds. So apparently, when she was found, Amy's body was so badly decomposed that her teeth had fallen out and were found sunken into the ground beneath her. So because of this, investigators think that it's likely that her body had been laying in that spot, in that field, for the entire time she was missing. Like, they think she was killed very soon after being taken.
So
and it's
sad.
like, she was only 12 feet from the road. That's what I don't get. I'm like,
how did nobody find her?
That's
she was missing. This was like a year later, wasn't it? That they found, like almost a year later.
It was months. It was 3 months.
Oh, it was only 3 months? I thought it was way longer.
Or wait. It was late October she went missing, and then they found her in February.
Damn.
So, yeah, it's rough. But despite this level of decomposition, the responding officers recognized the blonde hair and the clothes from the missing posters, and they immediately called in the FBI. 40 agents quickly arrived at the scene. And a little over 1,000 feet from the body, they also found a curtain and a blanket, which were sent off for testing as well. Eventually, Amy's body was sent for autopsy, and the cause of death was found to be stab wounds to the neck. Now, once the identity was confirmed, agents headed to the Mihaljevic home to tell them the news. But when they arrived, the media was already outside, looking to capture the family's devastation on camera. So basically, before the police even got there to tell them, they knew because they heard the body had been found, and then the media was just all over their house. So they're like, it must be Amy's body.
Dude, that sucks. That's like the worst way to find out like your fucking daughter was found decaying. That's how Kobe Bryant's family found out about him and his daughters.
Are you fucking serious?
They found out from the media. Yeah, they sued the media. This is like
I heard that they showed a video of his body or something.
Yeah, they showed the wreck, and they showed it was like a video of like his body and her body, and that's how they found out was from the news.
That is so fucked up,
right? Like
that is so fucked up. I can't even imagine. That reminds me, like,
I hope they get a big. I don't know if it's like happened already, but I know that they were like planning on suing the
just one of those things that it's just horrible because like no amount of money is going to make them feel better about that, especially for a family that's like already super wealthy.
Yeah, like
money is never going to make up for that. Like they can never fix that, and it's just like, but that's all they can do to punish these people and like try and teach them a lesson so they never do it to anyone else. But I'm sure that just feels like fucking horrible and pointless. And you're probably like, I don't even want your fucking money. Like,
yeah. I can't believe, I can't even believe the people that are okay with posting that shit either. Like, they're trying to be like the first one to make this on the news, and they don't give a fuck about the family. Like, they don't make sure that they know already, you know? Like,
yeah.
that you're a shitty reporter if you would rather post your story and be the first one than care and like ask the family how they're doing. You know what I'm saying? Like,
Yeah.
that's fucked up.
Yeah, and it makes me think of like, so a few years ago, me and my ex-boyfriend went to New Orleans, and while we were there, we went to the Museum of Death, which I was like all excited to go. I'm like, oh, this is gonna be like morbid and interesting and
I
gory.
remember you telling me about that. Isn't it like a fucking shrine to serial killers?
It was so fucked up. It was the most fucked up, like, and not in like a interesting way. Like, I just thought, okay, being into true crime, like I know that they had some like letters written by a serial killer, like handwritten or whatever, and like, but they also had like the skeleton of a horse and like which was cool to see. But I don't know what I thought it was going to be. But like, you know, New Orleans is known for being like witchy and like voodoo-y and whatever. So I'm like, oh, this is going to be. It was so fucked up. And like, so we go, and there's literally just like pictures of like Sharon Tate, who was 8 months pregnant when she was murdered by the Manson family, and the other victims. Just pictures of their dead bodies, like printed and like just out for you to see. And I'm like, no one wants to see this.
Yeah.
That's not like morbid interesting. I'm like,
it's almost like disrespectful.
It is. Like, her family's still alive. Could you imagine if like, I don't know if I don't remember if she had siblings or anything, but like imagine your brother was murdered and there were just pictures
just plaster it 12
of
by
his
12
fucking
on a fucking
dead body
museum.
in a museum for people to go gawk at.
Yeah, that's
I'm like, that's disgusting. It'd be one thing if you had, you know, I think they had like a shrunken head there, which I've seen at like the Natural History Museum, which is probably like hundreds of years old. That's morbid and interesting and fits the Museum of Death.
It's not fucked
you
up.
don't need, and then they were like playing in one TV, like they were just replaying videos of like the planes hitting the Twin Towers over and over.
The fuck?
And I was like, yeah, we've seen those. Like and like zooming in on the people like jumping out. And I get it because like I watched this documentary about like this man who like jumped out. But it's like, I don't know, it's weird. But this is where, so I immediately was like, this to me is like not right. Like, this place isn't just people who are interested in the macabre.
4 stars on Google.
Yeah, I was just like, this isn't just a place. This is for fucking weird. This is for people who get off on this shit. Yeah. That's what I felt like. And me and my ex were talking about. I was like, don't you feel like this is for people who are like, they're getting off on this place? He's like, yeah, absolutely. So before we leave, he goes to the bathroom and he comes back and he says, I'm pretty sure, which I don't know, don't quote me on this, but I'm pretty sure he said that in the stalls there were TV screens. I can't remember if it was in the stall or that it was just high enough that you could see it from the stall. Yeah. That were just playing crime scene videos of dead bodies.
Bathroom?
In the men's room.
Ew.
For people to jerk off to is how I'm taking that.
Ew, that makes me so uncomfy.
Isn't that so fucked up?
I don't like that at all.
Why are you playing them in the bathroom?
Yeah, what the fuck? Why do you have a TV in the bathroom at all?
I was like, he told me that. I was like, absolutely fuck this place. And by the way, don't assume if I'm wrong go call them and see if I'm right about that. Because I don't want to be sued for defamation if I got some of the details wrong. Yeah. I'm telling you, this is what I remember. This is how I remember it happening. This was
the vibes
years
were not
ago
great.
now. Like, I was like, I must have been like 22. Yeah. So it was a long fucking time ago.
Oh, God.
But like, anyway, I just remember leaving there like, fuck this place.
Never going here again.
I get it. That's kind of their thing. But like, I'm someone who's interested in true crime and this kind of stuff. And it was, I mean, it was 10 times too far. I was like, this is the most I was like, absolutely fuck this place. And these people, I hate them. Yeah. They're horrible people. And I think they're all like, they're the people who are like distributing that shit online, that like what do they call them, snuff films? Oh yeah, like the 2 guys 1 screwdriver type of thing.
Yeah, like Human Centipede, but like the black market version.
Yeah, like that's That's who that museum is for. It's for fucking people who, yeah, it's gross. It's fucking gross. Anyway, sorry, I went off on such a tangent.
Well, on your list of not to visit.
How did we get there? Sorry, what?
I don't know. I said just add that to your list of to do not visit.
Yeah, add it to, don't go there if you go to New Orleans. There's much more like fun, kind of morbid, spooky stuff you can do there. I think it's because we
were talking about how like the media...
Oh, because the media, the media like, alerted her parents to it. It's first, like, just fuck the media, fuck these people. Yeah. Anyway,
just not.
Sorry, 5-hour tangent. But
we're back.
Christy Sabo's world was shattered when she heard the news. At only 11 years old, she could not fathom such an evil in the world that her 10-year-old best friend was murdered. But eerily, she does think that Amy predicted her own death. In the Lake Erie Murders episode, she tells HBO that shortly before Amy went missing, the two of them had played with a Ouija board.
Oh, God.
According to Christy, Amy asked the board when she was going to die, and one letter at a time, the board spelled out soon.
Oh, that gave me chills. Don't fuck with Ouija boards. If I ever have kids and they come home with a Ouija board, I'm going to be like, no, the fuck you didn't. Get that out of my house.
I think there might be one in the closet behind you.
Oh, no, don't tell me that. Seriously, they're fucked.
Yeah, they are fucked.
Oh.
But with that, I know everyone loves a two-parter. That's what I'm telling myself. Because I can't stop writing really long ones. But I think...
You're a storyteller.
Yeah.
Good storyteller.
This is what I was telling my boyfriend the other day. This is why I'm good at podcasting. It's all the things that people have always told me are wrong with me in my whole life. I talk too loud. I won't shut the fuck up. I tell too many details when I tell stories. And I'm like weirdly interested in true crime. I'm like, all of those things, that's what's going to make me good at this.
The perfect recipe for a good true crime podcast.
Yes, so here we are. Anyway, that is where we're going to stop for this week. And then we are going to finish the rest of the story and talk about the investigation into the murder and more suspects and everything next week. So, but that just gives me chills. Like the fact that she asked it and it said soon. And it's like, I think Ouija boards are fake. Like, I don't really fully believe in ghosts. And like, I don't know. I don't not believe in ghosts. I've just like, I don't believe that they're spelling shit on a Ouija board is how I'll say it. But also, even if they weren't, it's like, well, it was either Christy or Amy then pushing it to spell soon. And apparently it's like rocked Christy her whole life.
Apparently,
so it's like, was Amy doing it as a joke? Did you do the apparently thing?
Yeah.
I gotta stop saying apparently.
No, because I say it too.
I have to stop saying apparently.
I can't stop hearing it every time I hear the word apparently because it's like, no matter how you say it, it always sounds like that. Apparently, I've never been on live television before.
Apparently,
you shouldn't fuck with Ouija boards.
And apparently, we're going to end it here for today. Yeah. So follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok at A Trial by Podcast. Make sure to include the A Trial by Podcast.
The first letter of the alphabet, A.
And hopefully by this time, my brother has finished the website that he hasn't even started yet, even though I asked him 4 weeks ago and he promised he would start it. But it will be atrialbypodcast.com.
Now, Zach.
If you do go to that website and it says, whoops, we're doing maintenance or working on the website and nothing's there, email my brother at gmail.com and tell him to get going on this website. You can
at
also
Zach Attack.
at Zach. So just kidding. Thank you, Zach, for doing our website for free. You're so amazing and we love you so much and you're the best. And I'm just teasing you and don't be mad at me for this. Okay. Also, you can email us if you want to suggest some cases or, I don't know, tell us a story.
Tell us we're doing a terrible fucking job.
Yeah, or if you want to bully us and be like, we hate your podcast and you guys suck. Okay, court is adjourned for now. We'll be back next week. Bye.
Okay, bye.